Hi, I'm Sharon Macklis at IDG Communications, here with episode 34 of Do More with R, Import Data from an API. There are a lot of great R packages that let you import from an API with a single function, but sometimes an API doesn't have its own package. Good news is, it's easy to code your own. I'll demo this with the AccuWeather API. But the process and code I'll show will work for most other APIs that use a key for authentication. If you want to follow along, go to developer.accuweather.com and follow the steps to sign up, create an app, and get a free key. There are instructions in this video's associated article at InfoWorld on how to do all that. But here, let's focus on the R code for the API. First, I'll load the HTTR package for getting data from the API, JSONLite for parsing results, and dplyr to use pipes. Next, and this is critical, I need to know how to structure a URL in order to request the data I want from the API. Figuring out the query structure can be the hardest part of a process, depending on how well the API is documented. Fortunately, the AccuWeather API docs are pretty good. Any API query needs a resource URL, or what I like to think of as the URL's root or base, and then specific parts of the query. Here's what AccuWeather says in its documentation for the Forecast API that it needs. The base URL is mostly a constant, but it needs a location code. If you're just looking for a forecast for one location, well, you can cheat and use the AccuWeather website to search for a forecast and then check the URL that comes back. Let me show you. See that /571_PC at the end of this URL? That's the location code for 01701, the zip code for our office in Framingham, Massachusetts. Or you can use an AccuWeather Locations API to pull location codes with R, which I'll show in a bit. Query parameters for specific data requests get tacked onto the end of a base URL. The first one you add starts with a question mark, followed by name equals value. Any additional key value pairs are added with an ampersand, followed by name equals value. So let me show you. Just to add my API key, the URL would look like this. See how the API is tacked onto the end of the base URL with a question mark, and then API key equals what my key value is. If I wanted to add a second query parameter, say changing the default details from false to true, it would look like this. You can see here the first query is after the question mark, and the second key value pair was added after an ampersand. We can use HTTR's GET function to make a data request with that URL. So this paste command here is just adding my API key at the end. I've stored it as an R environment variable so the key doesn't display on my screen. Instructions on how to do that are also in this video's associated article. Meanwhile, let me run the code. Now let's take a look at my raw results with the str or structure command. This is a pretty complex list. The actual data we want is mostly in content. But you can see that it's in a raw format looking almost like binary data. Fortunately, the HTTR package makes it easy to convert from raw to a usable format with the content function. Content gives you three conversion options: as raw, which definitely isn't helpful in this case, as parsed, which seems to usually return some sort of list, and as text. For JSON, especially nested JSON, I find text to be the easiest to work with. So let me run content with as equals text, and then see the structure. It's just JSON as a text string. This is where the JSONLite package comes in. The from JSON function will turn that JSON text string into a more usable R object. If I run dplyr's glimpse function to get a good look at the structure, I can see it's a list with 2 items. Item 1 has some metadata, including a text field we might want. The second item is a data frame with a lot of data points we definitely want for the forecast. So let's look specifically at that data frame by storing it in its own variable. This seems to have most of the information we'd want for a forecast. If I run glimpse on that, you can see that this was nested JSON because some of the columns are actually their own data frames. But from JSON made it all pretty seamless. So let's go over the basics of how to pull data from an API once again. 1. Figure out the API's base URL and query parameters and construct a request URL. 2. Run HTTR's get on the URL. 3. Parse the results with content. You can try it with as equals parsed, but if that returns a complicated list, you can also try as equals text. If necessary, run JSONLite's from JSON function on your text results. A couple of more points before I wrap up. 1. If we go back to my raw results, the initial object returned from get, you can see that there's a status code. 200 means all was okay. But if there's a code in the 400s, something went wrong. If you're writing a function or script, you can check whether the status code is in the 200s before additional code runs to make sure you got a good result. And 2, if you've got multiple query parameters, it can get a little annoying to string them all together with the paste command. Get has another option. You can create your query arguments as a named list using this format. See the structure here? The get function takes the base URL as the first argument and a list of names and values as the second query argument. Each one is name equals value with the name not in quotation marks. The rest of the code here is the same. That works for the AccuWeather Locations API as well. Here's what the API is looking for. Here's the base URL, and then it has 2 requirements, the API key and Q, which is the text that it's searching for. And that's what I'm searching for here. So let's run that. And see the results. The key column holds the code. Done. That's all for this episode. Thanks for watching. For more R tips, head to the Do More with R page at go.infoworld.com/morewithR, all lowercase except for the R. You can also find the Do More with R playlist on the YouTube IDG Tech Talk channel, where you can subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Hope to see you next time.